Okay, today we're going to talk about greatest integer functions. I want you to actually write the function rule for each of these, which you should be able to do by the end. We'll call this one f of x, we'll call this one g of x, and we'll call this one h of x. In order to make my life more simple, I want you to start with the leftmost point to be able to do it, the leftmost included point. And I'll show you what I mean in a second, okay? So greatest integer functions, they have these braces to indicate what's happening. And what a greatest integer function means is that every y value is an integer, essentially. In all of my examples, every y value was an integer. Every function was an integer. And you'll see them called step functions sometimes because it looks like a stair step, okay? We still have the same values that we did before. If the absolute value of a is greater than 1, that's going to be a vertical stretch. If the absolute value of a is less than 1, that's going to be a vertical compression. If a is negative, it's going to be reflected across the x-axis. If the absolute value of b is greater than 1, it's going to be a horizontal stretch. If the absolute value of b is less than 1, it's going to be a horizontal compression. If b is a negative, it's going to be reflected across the y-axis. If my h is going to move me to the left and to the right, and my k is going to move me up and down. Now, here's the thing. There's no real starting point. There's not like a vertex, and hk is usually our vertex. So when I'm writing these, I'm going to start with the leftmost included point, which is the solid dot. The leftmost included point, okay, for my h and my k. So, doing a different example, let's say I have one that looks like this. Well, let me do the parent function first. This would be the parent function, which it's really hard to see, but the first dot is filled in, the second one is open. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to have f of x equals, this tells me that it's a greatest integer function. A is 1, b is 1, h is 0 because it's starting on 0, 0, and k is 0. So it's just going to be this, okay? Now what happens here is a vertical stretch, what that means is that these change how far apart they are. A horizontal stretch, what that means is they change the length that they are. So I'm looking at how long they are and or how far apart they are. So if I have something that looks like this one right here, they're 3 units long, which is going to be a horizontal stretch by a factor of 3. So that means that when these get 3 units longer, I'm stretching them horizontally by a factor of 3, which means that my b value is going to be 3. So I'm going to put that in my function. So that's now a b value of 3 to make it 3 units long. The steps in between are now 2, which is twice as big, so that's a vertical stretch of a factor of 2. This was my horizontal stretch by a factor of 3. Vertical stretch by a factor of 2 means that it's going to get a 2 right here, because a is going to be 2. Okay. Now I'm going to look at the leftmost filled in dot to write my function. So it moved from here to here, which means that it went to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to do x minus negative 7. And it didn't go up or down at all, so k is 0. I'm going to simplify this. 1/3 x plus 7/3. And that's how I would write that greatest integer function, okay? Now, flipped across the y-axis, what that would mean on this is that instead of being solid to open, it would be open to solid. That's flipped across the y-axis. So if I have a negative value here where my b is, they're going to look like this. If I have a negative value here where my a is, they're going to look like, instead of going up and to the right, they're going to go down and to the right. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's what I'm looking at here, okay? So when I'm doing these, I want to check what the sign is here and what the sign is here, because a change in sign here is going to make me go from open to closed. A change in sign here is going to make me go from up and to the right to down and to the right, okay? I'll do a couple more examples, and then I'm going to show you how to graph some. Ignore this piece. So again, I'm going to start with my leftmost filled in dot, which means I'm moving to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm moving up 2. So I'm going to have x plus 4 and then plus 2 on the outside, right? That's on the screen? Yeah, okay. Now I'm looking at this, it's going open to closed. So that means this guy right here has to be a negative. So I'm going to put a negative in there to give me that. And then I also notice that it's 3 units long, so it's going to be -1/3. These have a stretch of 3, so it's going to be a 3 right here. So that's how I'm looking at that change. I'm going to simplify by distributing this out. I need somewhere clean to write. F of x equals 3, greatest integer 1/3 x minus 4/3 plus 2. Okay? And then I'm going to show you how to graph a couple. So let me grab some graph paper. Okay, so we're just going to make a couple up. So if I have something that tells me I really shouldn't put a 1/3 here because that's going to make my life miserable, but I'm going to show you how to do it, okay? So this first one, I'm moving to the left 2 and down 4. So from the origin to left 2, down 4. This is vertically stretching me by a factor of 3. I didn't have anything happening horizontally, so that means that these are going to go over 1 unit. But they're going to be up 3 units every single time. So 1, 2, 3. They're going over 1 unit, up 3. The second circle is open. I know it's hard to tell. It would also go this direction, but I still started at this point. It doesn't matter where I start, which means essentially we can have a lot of different functions that would give us the same graph, okay? The second one, I'm gonna make these units of 1/3. So this is gonna be a unit of, this is gonna be 1, right here. This is going to be 2. This is going to be 3, etc. Okay? My x's are still 1, 2, 3, etc. So I'm going to go 2 to the left and up 3. Put it right here. It's still only going over 1. But it's going up 1/3. So that means it's only going up 1/3 of a unit. And remember that every line is 1/3 of a unit. And we're gonna go all the way like that. So that's how I would draw this guy, okay? This one, I'm gonna start 9 units to the right